everyone, I'm Whitney, and today I'm sharing a quick tutorial on high pass frequency separation. This is an editing technique that I use every day. It's very, very useful for portrait work, fashion work, beauty work, and product work. So it's definitely a great tool to have in your toolbox. So we'll go ahead and get started. First I'll explain quickly what high pass frequency separation is. Basically, what you're doing is you're separating the color from the texture in your image. This allows you to edit the color separately without impacting the texture and vice versa. So it's really, really useful. So we'll go ahead and get started. I usually apply my exposure and color edits in Lightroom or Capture One, and then bring the image into Photoshop for this technique. So here's my image, and I'm going to make two duplicates of the image. The shortcut to this on Mac is Command J. And I'm going to rename layer 1 as color and layer 1 copy as texture. So I'll go ahead and start by clicking on the color layer. And I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And the key to this step is not overdoing it. If you blur it too much, you'll end up with a weird halo around the edges of like the skin and the hair at the end of your editing, so that's not good. So I usually try to make it so the colors start to blend together. You can see over here. But so like not all the detail is gone. So probably like right there is good. Then we'll go ahead and go to the texture layer and click on image, apply image. And when you first open this, it's going to look different than what's on my screen. You're going to want to select the layer color, and then you're going to change the blending mode to subtract, and then you'll want to make sure these numbers match mine or are close to mine. These just impact how the texture looks. I've found that these numbers work really well for me, so I'll go ahead and use those today. Press OK, and then you're going to go over to the blending mode and change it to linear light. And so essentially, as you can see, we have the color on this layer and the texture on this layer. You can see all the skin and hair and everything in there. So go ahead and have those on. And when I do this, I usually start with the texture layer. And I try to do most of my editing on this layer because it looks more natural. I've found that the more you do on the color layer, the less natural it looks. This technique is really, really easy to overdo. You'll see a lot of really bad examples on YouTube. So my big tip here is to not overdo it. So I'm going to start on the texture layer, see what I can do there. So you can use the spot healing brush if you want. I usually use the clone stamp tool. And so you're going to go ahead and select your area, nice smooth piece of skin, and just clone stamp that area over the rough texture. And quick tip here, if I know I'm going to be printing my image really large, I'll zoom in really close because I'll know that like this image is going to be huge, every little detail is going to show. But if I'm just editing the image just for like Instagram or to show on my website, usually the image is going to be pretty small, like even smaller than this. And so I'll probably only zoom in like to here, depending on what the image is being used for. This just saves me time because it's really easy to spend hours and hours doing this. Believe me, I have done it. So yeah, so this is really helpful. This is also great for like editing lines out of the eyes. Here I usually use the spot healing brush, and you can just kind of select it there, and it just gets rid of that line like really easily. There's still a little color left, but that'll be pretty easy to take care of. And then I also love editing hair on this texture layer because hair is mostly all on the texture layer. It's like if you do this, I guess that's not the best example, but usually you can do this and it looks like extremely natural. So it's easy to edit out like stray hairs on this layer, especially like on skin where it can be really difficult sometimes to edit that one stray hair that's in front of your model's eye or lips or something. This is like really handy in that situation. So yeah, we'll just say that I was done on this texture layer and we'll move on to color. So the color layer is where you can blend the colors together. So my main goal here is to just see these dark colors up against these light colors, like especially right here. There's really light, really dark right next to each other. My goal is to blend that, so it's not just a really stark contrast. So I'll do that by going to the lasso tool, and I'm going to make sure this is feathered. If it's not feathered, it's just going to be like a really contrasty line, and that's not going to do you any favors. So I usually do around like 10 to 20, and you go ahead and select the area that you want to edit, and then go to Filter, Blur, and you can do Gaussian blur. I think this blur just kind of blurs it all out equally, so if you want to do that, you can. What I usually do is I use motion blur. And that's because here you can control the angle that the blur is coming from. So you can see whichever angle I'm pushing, like it has a different effect. And this is really helpful because if you choose an angle that's opposite of the line that you're editing, for example, this line is pretty horizontal. So if I did an angle opposite like this, it'll kind of even out that line. So I can go ahead and do that. And remember to try not to overdo it. And then you can also select areas of color, like blemishes, and just make those disappear completely, which is nice. And you can see that the skin texture is still there. Looks great. I'll do it closer again so you can see it better. Let's go ahead and choose that part. And yeah, you can see that that just took care of that really easily. Perfect. So you can spend a lot of time doing this. Another thing you can do is you can add more color in between the two layers. So this is nice because it won't impact these pixels. So you can, if you accidentally overdo it, you can just kind of scale it back a little bit more easily. So what you can do is click New Layer and take the paintbrush, and you do have the option of making your own brush. Fstoppers has a really great tutorial on this. I'm not going to do that right now because it takes kind of a long time at first. But I'll take my brush and then I'll set the opacity somewhere between 10 and 20%. And what you can do is you select the color in the skin and just paint more color on top of that. And it's an easy way to, again, blend the colors, add color where you want it to be, just make it look nice and smooth and nice and pretty. And I'm just going to do this really quickly. So as you can see, that makes a pretty big difference. And again, here it's really easy to overdo it. So just be careful while you're doing this. Also, creating your own brush can help it look a lot more natural. So I'll put the link to the Fstoppers tutorial in this blog post so you can find that. But yeah, now I'll just group all of these together. You can name it high pass frequency, and you can see before and after. And so I'll go ahead and show you my final image. Oh, that's very zoomed in. There we go. So that's kind of where I got to, I think in about, I can't remember how long it took, maybe 15, 20 minutes. So I can probably do a little bit more here, but that's what you can do. So I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know. I love to talk about photography, and I'd love to chat with you more about this technique. And yeah, and I'll also write out a document with the steps to this tutorial, so you can have it in writing. That can be really helpful. And you can just access that by going to my website, whitneyfinough.com, and go to free resources. Just type in your email and you'll find that in my free resource library, along with a lot of other great resources that you can use to help your photography and help your business. So thanks for joining me, and I'll talk to you again soon.